Welcome to Act 2 You're On. Join us weekly at our studio roundtable as Rhonda
and Kate invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying vibrant and healthy.
Launch your next great act with authenticity and purpose.
Summon your courage, superstar, and step into the limelight. So grab a coffee
or a martini
and let's set the stage for a grand entrance. It's Act 2.
You're on. Greetings, friends. I'm Rhonda Garvin Conaway, and today I have the pleasure of podcasting with my co-host,
Kate Levy, and we are also joined by our talented producer behind the scenes, Kathy Carswell.
We're so glad you're here, Kathy. We couldn't do it without you.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I am very excited. Our guest is a true change maker, small business owner, and what he does is something unique and impactful.
So cool.
So before we welcome him to the show, my question for you is this. What if I told you that you could have more convenience, food security, save money, get a little more exercise, and experience a bit more fun in your life?
I'm completely on board. I need all those things. Were you talking to me?
Yes. You and everyone else. This truly could be your experience as a result of what you plant in the ground. Let me tell you more. Today's guest, Chris English, is a small business owner, educator, and farmer. He owns and operates Edible Homescapes, where he designs and installs customized edible gardens, offers workshops, and grows food on his one-acre market garden with a mission to help secure local food systems and improve the health of our society and environment. Chris is a co-founder of the NPO Revive the Roots, which just celebrated its 10-year anniversary. During his time at Revive the Roots, he initiated the Food for Thought program, which resulted in the establishment of 2 educational gardens at Smithfield Public Schools in Rhode Island. He also managed the community gardens and facilitated community workshops. Chris holds 4 certifications in permaculture design and was co-director of the Providence Zen Center Permaculture project in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks.
So let's kick it off by chatting a little bit more about what edible landscaping is. For those who may have just a brief understanding, can you dive into that subject for us?
Sure. Yeah, it can take a lot of different forms. And I think what's important to remember is that what's right for you totally depends on what your needs are and what your context is. And so some people live on second floor apartments with nothing but a balcony. And some people might have large sprawling backyards with forests or water features. So there's a huge amount of diversity in the way that it can take shape. Essentially, the idea is trying to incorporate some kind of edible or productive element into your homescape, into your home setting.
So in reading your materials, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about why is shifting to a local regenerative form of agriculture a necessary change?
Well, agriculture, I've always found that agriculture, it's a really, really succinct way to kind of address a lot of the environmental issues that we're facing at these times. And doing it in a way that's regenerative, i.e. leaving the soil and the environment as good or preferably better than it was when you got there, is really something that needs to happen. Environmental destruction in the name of farming, loss of topsoil, just the sheer amount of fossil fuels that's necessary to support our agricultural infrastructure, transportation, synthetics, all those things really are having a huge toll on the environment and significantly contributing to climate change and just the overall health of the environment in general. When you shift our practices into a form that's more localized, more regenerative, improving environments and ecosystems rather than drawing them down, you are directly impacting and helping to mitigate climate change and making a healthier society for everybody that's immediately affected by it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the intersection of gardening, landscaping, and activism. When you think what we've done to our world since the industrial age for the last 100 years, it's so exciting to start hearing people like you talk about, okay, but now what do we do at this moment to begin to shift things and understand our relationship to the earth again, because we're so disconnected. So the work that you're doing seems right on point.
Yeah, I think so too. And I appreciate one point you made about simply being disconnected from nature. I really think that's a seriously deep vein, that working with your direct environment, getting outside and interacting with it, it's going to foster a connection to the environment. That a good quote, I'm going to paraphrase, I don't remember it exactly. You will not defend something with your life that you do not love. The way that we're allowing our environment and to just be destroyed underneath our feet, I think reflects a serious separation and disconnection of people and nature and a relationship with it in a way that makes them love it and want to defend it. And we can recreate that in our lives, just interacting in whatever level you're at.
Oh, well said. And it does feel like, we're beginning to clue in, and we'll hold signs to turn back the climate change, but will we go and take a walk in nature? And and it's restorative. It's as good for the earth as it is for you to get in touch and to be following these practices. So this is really a very timely conversation. So interesting.
Yeah.
I think I want to add to your biography philosopher, because that was a really lovely ideology that you just shared. Tell me how you came to think this way and what led you on this path. How did you arrive at this moment?
Oh, it's been about 10 or so years in the making now, I guess a little bit more. Truthfully, I suppose it really started in high school, towards the end of high school. A lot of friends and myself, we were really just starting to become aware of these larger environmental and social issues. And so I kind of originally approached all this from a sort of a pessimistic, negativist view, thinking that we're really in trouble. This is going to happen. It's going to happen in my generation. Oh no, and then I discovered permaculture, which is sort of like the radical edge of regenerative agriculture. It's a super fascinating topic. I discovered that as a really proactive way to immediately engage in it. It wasn't something you needed a degree to just begin. You can just go plant a tree and start working where you're at. And so we started to come at agriculture and sustainable agriculture and working with the community from the lens of wanting to try and make that impact. And so that's when 5 other friends and myself started the nonprofit Revive the Roots in Smithfield, Rhode Island. They just had their 10-year anniversary this summer. It was wonderful. We've been doing community gardens over there, planting what's called food forests or edible forest gardens, which we can talk about more at some point if we have the time. And just welcoming the community to come and co-develop this 16 acres that was leased from the land trust with us. And so that sort of became my experience incubator for all kinds of a huge diversity of types of agriculture. And from there, I went on to continue other projects.
I'm really curious. So you've got the nonprofit piece and you're a small business owner. What is that like to be a farmer and try to thrive as a small business owner in this particular industry?
Well, being a small business owner isn't easy. I've been going through all kinds of trials and tribulations in trying to make this business successful and really nail down what the concept is that I'm trying to put out there. I think one of my biggest issues is I have too much that I want to fit into one concept, whether it's small farming or bringing home gardening or education and all these services. Now I see how they all overlap and interact together. Picking one to nail down and streamline first is a challenge. I do think that it's such a timely and important service that I think the demand for it is really there, and it's just far from saturated. I think we need more small businesses with this kind of service, and I think there's room for it all. Does that answer your question?
It does. And boy, does that idea resonate, that sometimes we have so many ideas about how to address problems that it's hard to know where to start.
Well, I appreciate that you're sharing, even talking about that initial pessimism.
Yeah.
And the overwhelm of what to do, but then taking your passion and taking action. It is exactly what folks need to hear. Like sometimes you just take one idea and you kind of figure that part out, even as you're discerning what's the bigger life purpose. But taking action really is an important part for, I'll say, your generation, which kind of ages us a little bit. But I find it absolutely exciting and thrilling and hopeful about where we can head. But I think it is important to take action, find your passion, see how that intersects with the world's needs, and then get to work.
I'm trying my best.
And you're living that, and it's wonderful role modeling. And so I wonder what is the most rewarding part about the work that you're doing? The most rewarding part, and then maybe you can talk about the challenge.
Well, I think for me, really the most rewarding part, I guess it's kind of a twofer. It's really important for me in my life to be doing something with my time that feels like it's part of a bigger picture, that feels like I'm really contributing to a mission that I can believe in. That's what carries me forward and motivates me on the day-to-day to really actually invest myself in it. I've done lots of jobs where I'm really just spinning someone else's wheels, and sometimes it's necessary and you have to do it, and that's okay. Coming from that perspective, that's part of why I really value being able to set my own agenda and dig in doing work that is meaningful, I believe, for myself and within the wider picture of things. So that's super valuable. Secondly, I just love creating something tangible. The feeling that I get when I've finished, building these beds and the sprouts are just coming up and everything's clean and straight and smells good, and being outside and having this sense of creation over this, whatever it is in someone's backyard or on my own farm is really what I'm referring to right now. It's super gratifying. So I love being outside, working with the ground, and being able to take a step back up the hill and just look down on something that you've built. It's nice.
And we probably all have that in our history, right? I mean, how many of us come from farming communities? That's a lot of our, getting in touch with our ancestry, but also getting back in touch with the earth. And that's got to feel good. And also doing something that is really helpful societally. That's good life work.
Which leads me to my next question. I know we mentioned in your bio how you worked with the school system in Smithfield, Rhode Island. Tell us about the initiatives there. And I'm particularly moved by that, as Kate and I both have education in our backgrounds and our teachers. And I just think there's nothing more important in terms of having a platform to influence, inspire, mentor than in education. So share with us what that experience was like and the kinds of things that went on there.
Sure. Well, we started that project with Revive the Roots in 2012, I think is when we first began that. And essentially, the plan was to create a 40-foot by 120-foot edible forest garden. It's like a technical term for essentially you're designing a garden that mimics the structure and the social relationships of natural ecosystems, or a forest ecosystem in this sense. I always like to say, nobody goes in the forest and weeds and waters and fertilizes it, right? And it grows wonderfully. So wouldn't it be so nice if our gardens could resemble that and emulate some of those natural services? That is the big picture concept, the holy grail, if you will, of edible forest gardening that you are striving to achieve by mimicking nature as much as possible. And so we were going to build that, building relationships with different classes and teachers. So we did projects, for example, one of my favorite ones was we took a freshman math class who is doing plotting coordinates and graphing. And on this perfect rectangle of a lot that we were going to build a garden on, we laid out 10 by 10 string grids over it. And then I drew a map of where the different plants would go, made it appear as coordinates on this graph. And so then we gave the kids color-coded stakes in different teams, and they went out and they essentially on this lifestyle map plotted all the coordinates for all the plants would go out, successfully doing the site layout. And that was a really fun project. It was super successful and worked out really well. Yeah, and then just ongoing work with environmental biology, things like that. Students gain experience planting, watching it grow, even an art class that was using some of the products grown to create different kinds of dyes, and then using that for projects in the classroom.
That is true synergy when you can have that comprehensive learning approach to understanding something that may or may not pique your interest, but you can apply all these different skills and interests because that's what it requires, really.
And especially for our students now to be returned to nature. And who knows what you've inspired. And I think about folks who are listening who probably are a little bit more like me. If they I love to garden. I don't think I'm particularly gifted or knowledgeable. I was saying before we interview started that I have a friend who's a master gardener who really helps me and kind of explains what to do. But I love to be in my backyard, digging things up. I love once I've planted, and then I kind of in the spring, you run out and you see, how are you doing out there? Do you talk to your Do you talk to the things that you grow, Chris?
Yeah.
You can tell us here.
We really
or
want
it
to
could
know.
be a personal
the
thing.
things I talk to the most is the mushrooms. I don't know why in particular. Maybe it's because they have more of, I don't know. It's funny. But yeah, no, I'll talk to myself. I'll talk to the space. Yeah, a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It is amazing. So for the ordinary folk like me with no farming experience, it's certainly in my genes for sure, but little to no, property to contribute. But how do we do this? How do we get this kind of regenerative movement started in our own backyards, in our local areas?
I think kind of going back to one of the earlier points is for individuals, it really does depend on what your circumstances is. Some people might be able to plant big gardens in their backyard and some people maybe can't, but there's no end to ways that you can really support this movement. For example, even just making choices of where to buy things. So you should, if you can, support local agriculture, go to the farmers markets, be there and patronize that community. And that's huge. These farmers markets, they need attendance, and the local farmers, it's not easy. And it's really hard to compete with Walmart. And so making that choice that you're going to support local and that you're choosing to let your money go into somewhere that's bringing carbon back into the ground and it, that's something that everybody pretty much everywhere really can do, whether they have land or not. And then aside from that, really, I think an important concept is making households generative in any way that's possible. And so, it used to be that home economics, houses did produce something on some levels in some way. And now households are almost 100% places where you just go to consume. And so it's a really, really consumptive habitat environment. That's just the way we live now. And finding ways to generate something, whether that's just a basil plant in your window, a garden outside, or compost. Everyone makes food waste. There's lots of really simple ways that you can compost your food scraps at home or give it to other services. I know there's some in Providence that collect compost waste and can sell it back to people, make a business out of it.
These are great examples. I'm thinking about what you just said about consuming. And what was the term you used? Will you say it again for our audience and for me?
Making households generative. Or just to generate, to produce something from your space instead of it being exclusively consumptive.
Yeah, that's very cool. And you just gave a fantastic example of how to do that. There was one other thing we could do. So we could go to our farmers markets. What's something else very concrete and tangible that we could start maybe implementing tomorrow?
Build a raised bed. I think that's my favorite thing. And that's what I find people most often actually want from my service is a really simple way. It can just be small, 4x4 plot, get like half a yard of dirt, and you produce so much out of such a small amount of space. You might be very surprised. Start growing something in whatever corner, whatever nook you have. You can pretty much make something grow in almost any setting, including a forest, thus the mushrooms. If all you have is shade and woodland, you can grow mushrooms.
That feels very doable.
It does. And I started an herb garden a couple of years ago, not knowing what I was doing. And it's interesting how some of them come back and then some you have to replant, but it's just fun. Like when you add those things into your meal, and boy, do fresh herbs, that's a game changer when you're cooking. Oh, so you do feel sort of pride in your backyard. That's a little different. But I like all of those tips are really helpful. I feel like I can implement a bunch of those myself. So thank you.
We're actually at the point in our show. That's one of our favorite times when we ask our guests to give a golden nugget, a bit of wisdom or something that you really lock onto that helps you in the work that you do or the way that you live your life. Chris, what would you like to share with our audience today?
I think that's something that's been a theme throughout my life, and a lot of the things that I've done so far have sometimes being a little naive can be a beautiful thing, and allowing yourself to jump in without this fear and self-limit is really important. everyone's a beginner when they begin. Give yourself permission to be an amateur and just go ahead and begin something. Plant the tomato plant, let it die, and then try again. Like I've killed so many plants, but now I'm pretty good at not killing them.
That's very humbling.
Feel better.
Yeah, and that's okay.
I feel so much better.
Yeah, allowing yourself to just start where you are. Let it be a playful, interactive experience. Observe and interact, and just learn about what you can do with what you have. Don't create limitations to beginning something. Yeah, there's a lot of things that even with the nonprofit that the friends and I started, like knowing what I do now and having more experience in the professional world, I don't know that I would have done it again where I'm at now. And that's a really interesting idea, but just, it was such an invaluable experience in my life. I don't think I would be where I was now.
And that sets you up for good decision-making as you move forward. Like sometimes you try something and sometimes you fail. It fails or you kill it. And then you just pull it out and put something else in.
Yeah.
I know from when I started, I went crazy as many people did with gardening during the first spring of the pandemic. And then the next year I came out and clearly it was way over. I had overplanted and things were like squashed in. And I thought, that's okay. I can just take them out. And I actually even put them in behind my yard. And that's how you learn, is by trying. And that's real. Those are wonderful life lessons. Lots of good stuff. Lots of golden nuggets in this conversation for sure.
Cheers to that.
So I know, I feel like we'll talk again in the future, but unfortunately coming to the end of our time. But I wonder if I can ask of you before we go, Chris, what's coming next for you?
What's coming next for me? What I'd really love to do right now, I have my one small farm. It's about on 1 acre. I'm trying to make that a great example, a great demonstration of what a 1 acre kind of miniature homestead could sort of look like, how to make it hyper efficient on the small scale that it is and still viable for market and like profitable. What I really want to do is go more heavily into some agroforestry practices on a larger acreage. So I would love to do tree crops with intermittent grazing animals. I'm keeping my eye out for land and trying to find places that I could rent or create partnerships, relationships with to take that experience of regenerative farming to the next scale up than where I'm actually at right now. That seems so thrilling and exciting, but it's hard. It's hard to find land and places where you can really do it.
Well, you're going to have to tell us when that happens so we can all follow your journey and support you in whatever way we can, because that sounds like just the kind of work our world needs right now.
I agree. Yeah. And there's a lot of people doing it too. And it's really, it's nice to see. Maybe it's because I'm so focused and invested in the movement in the first place that I see where it is, but it feels to me like it's really gaining a lot of momentum, and it gives you faith for our future. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is definitely radiating out of this conversation for sure. And I know our listeners are going to want to hear about what you do and learn from you. And they can do that best by going to your website, which is ediblehomescapes.com. So ediblehomescapes.com.
I'm also doing a shiitake mushroom log inoculation workshop in the last weekend of March. And so people are welcome to come to the Market Garden site and participate in a workshop, learn how to do it, get the hands-on experience, and then bring home their own mushroom logs.
Even though you could inoculate a mushroom. I'm learning.
There's a lot to learn here.
So much to learn. So we'll definitely check back in on your journey. We are so grateful for this conversation. So fascinating. Thank you. And of course, we have to say special thanks to our talented and skilled producer behind the scenes, Kathy Carswell, who you heard chuckling along with this conversation. You can't see her. Well, some of you are listening, so you can't see us, but she gesticulates like when something moves her, you get like these fist pumps or she just, clasps her heart. And you got lots of thumbs up from our producer. Excellent. And she's very inspiring. We couldn't do it without her, but thank you so much. Really fantastic conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. That was a lot of fun. It's wild how fast, that time can really go by when you're just talking.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. And before we go, we do want to remind people to definitely check out that website. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate them tuning in to this conversation today. We hope that we can all make a 4x4, go to the farmer's market, take action wherever we see the opportunity, and know it's okay to make a mistake along the way. If something dies, you can always replant.
Go back to the farmer's market and
try it again.
Buy another one. So friends, it's left for me to say, with that in mind, go forth, be brave, live well, and do good, because it's Act 2. You're on.
Act 2 You're On was brought to you by Act 2 Share Our Stage. You can find us at a2yo.com and also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Please download, listen, and subscribe wherever you find your podcast. You can support us using Patreon or buy us a coffee.
I do like coffee.
No, you don't need any more caffeine, Kate. Buy Us a Coffee is a platform that folks can use to support entrepreneurs and artists like us,
so we can keep providing resources for the doers and dreamers to find connection, purpose, and the skills needed to create a sustainable, fulfilling life to better serve the world. And also, so we can buy more coffee.
Oh, Kate, thanks for listening, everyone.